Hello, everybody, and welcome to our second webinar in our digital marketing series, What is Inbound Marketing and Do I Need It? Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce today's presenters. Darren Doc Bernstein has been in the internet marketing industry for 17 years, and he focuses on inbound for the past 6 years. He's very passionate about helping companies succeed online by helping them increase leads and grow revenue, which are great things. I'd also like to introduce Paul Trusick, who's the Director of Inbound and Digital Marketing with Senior Living Smart. Paul's experience in the digital space spans over 15 years and includes in-house marketing for industries that range from tech to higher education, as well as agency experience working with various senior living communities across the nation. So welcome to our attendees and welcome to our presenters. Doc, it's all yours.
All right, so welcome everybody. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here today. Just wanted to go over a quick agenda for the call. So we're basically going to be covering what is inbound marketing, how marketing has changed over the last few years. We're going to be covering something called Zero Moment of Truth, how to implement inbound, and how inbound applies to senior living. And then, like we were talking about earlier, we will have questions and answer time towards the end. So be submitting those questions during this presentation. So let's go ahead and get started. Who here on the webinar today remembers this movie? Paul, I mean, I'm sure you know what movie this is, right?
Yeah, one of my favorite 80s movies, iconic, Karate Kid.
Yeah, 80s movies, you gotta love them. So at this point in time in the movie, you know, he's learning this whole process of wax on, wax off. Does Daniel really understand at this point in time in the movie what he's being asked to do in this moment?
No, he's a newbie.
Yeah, the answer is really no. He's kind of getting frustrated. He doesn't understand why he keeps being told he has to do all the waxing and the painting and all that kind of stuff. But there was a point in time in the movie where Danielson kind of got it, and it's a little bit of a mix, and we kind of get some different answers whenever I do this presentation on at what point in the movie did Danielson actually understand why Miyagi was making him do all this stuff. And a lot of people seem to think that it's at that moment in time in the movie where he was actually in the fight scene towards the end, he's doing his crane and all that kind of stuff, and that's when he finally got it. But the actual time when he really got it was when Miyagi was talking to him while he was being frustrated, and he was not doing what he was supposed to be doing. He's coming out cussing and all that kind of stuff, and Miyagi throws the punch. And what ended up happening was, you know, at that moment in time, he finally understood wax on, wax off, and that's exactly what he did. And he blocked the punch. All the training that he was doing finally paid off, and at the end of the day, he finally understood what was going on. So at that particular moment in his journey throughout the movie, you know, everything finally made sense. Now he understood why he was being asked to do what he was being asked to do. All the silly things that Miyagi was making him do finally come to light, and everything made sense. So why do I share this story? I sometimes pose some theories during this presentation. Some of these things might challenge the audience a little bit. Some of them they may or may not agree with. But I just kind of ask you guys to sit back and listen to this as we put this thing together and ask questions that we can address a little bit later, and just stay with us as we go through this inbound journey together. And just remember, you know, at the end of the day, we're just wanting to wax on, wax off, right? So let's go ahead and get started. So the one thing that I always ask everybody is, what is the business that you're actually in? And when I ask that question, I'm typically, you know, given the answers of, you know, well, we're a, you know, in this case, you know, we're a senior living facility or whatever the case may be. And at the end of the day, when all is said and done, the actual business we're all in is in the trust business. And we want to make sure that everything that we do moving forward in any marketing initiative is kind of built around this core pillar, because people are starting to, you know, see through the marketing tactics that have been done over the years, and they're not buying it anymore. And so we really need to start looking at building trust with our audience. So to get into that, next step would be, you know, what is inbound marketing and how does that actually relate to this process of trust? So inbound marketing, in a quick, brief description, is really about, rather than buying ads like people have been doing in the past, buying email lists, cold calling, and whatnot. Inbound marketing is really focusing on creating educational content that's pulling people towards the website where they can learn more about you and be able to buy or whatever on their own accord. They want to have control. Inbound is an approach to marketing that teaches today's consumer. And we do that through a couple methods, which is basically content, but also the context of the content. Our goal is to help your businesses be found online and get qualified leads through the content on your website pages, blog articles, social messaging, video, and whatnot. That's all optimized. It can be shared out through social media and mobile. And then you got new stuff that's coming about, like with chat bots and all that kind of stuff too. But the big thing is really wrapping around the context and making their content that you're building applicable to your audience. So they are able to understand what is actually, you're able to better portray what it is that you want them to get from that content. You know your audience through persona building and whatnot. So at its core, inbound is really about building relationships with your audience, but by providing them with value way before they're ready to purchase your products. Inbound is also about building trust, not skepticism among your prospects. It's also about being loved and not being ignored by your customers. And at the end of the day, my favorite part is about outsmarting, not necessarily outspending your competitors. So when people visit your website, the question that we want to know is, are we helping solve their problems better than anyone else in the world? We get asked about how we do that, and that's going to be primarily through content. We're going to be talking about that here in a few more minutes, but really the goal is to be the Wikipedia in your space and have that information at your consumers and your prospects' fingertips. So let's do a little bit of history lesson really fast. Like in the early 2000s, how did people research or buy a product? I mean, who remembers these things? Do you even still have a yellow page, Paul?
No. I think the last one I saw may have been 6 years ago. And we're a little late.
Yeah, just before I moved last year, I actually had a yellow page that was still delivered to my old apartment. I think it was at my doorstep. I left it there for like 6 months or so. I never even actually brought it in the house. That's how annoyed I was by these things. But needless to say is that, this is how people used to do this. I mean, I was with another company that we owned as a family business years ago. We spent hundreds and thousands of dollars with yellow pages and all these other kind of things because that's how people found us. We always thought we had to be there. And so it was either through yellow pages or it was catalogs or mail or phone book or people were just picking up the phone. That's how people found you. In 2017, how are people researching and buying products and services? I mean, they're really buying, they're looking online. They're trying to find it online. They're trying to buy online. Or maybe they're in the retail environment. Maybe they're walking into like a Walmart and they're price shopping and they're trying to now scan the product and see how much it's being sold for on Amazon or whatnot. But really what they're doing is they're trying to find a trusted advisor. They're trying to find friends on social, be it Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, word of mouth. That's how people are shopping now. And the biggest place that they're starting, obviously, is Google. Google is the #1 search engine, right, for a reason, because it helps people find the best results that they can actually find for their query. So in this instance, traditional marketing has been broken for a while. Buyers are taking control. They're turned off by old school marketing that's basically beyond impersonal and that's actually interrupting. There's over 200 million numbers on the do not call list. Direct mail is never opened, at least 44% of it, and 86% of people skip TV commercials. I know this happens with me. The DVR is my best friend. And I know I can at least get a good 15% more TV watching in every night when I skip commercials. So that's an absolute truth. So what we want to do right now is we just kind of want to introduce the inbound methodology. Now this is something that HubSpot put together. HubSpot's an awesome marketing automation platform that allows us to be able to get a lot of the stuff done here we're talking about under one roof and with one easy platform to do it in. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is attract, convert, close, and delight our customers. We're trying to bring strangers to your website who have never heard about you specifically, but they have a pain point, they have something that they're looking for, and we're trying to attract them. We're trying to do that through blogging, through keyword research that we're doing, through possibly some social publishing. We've also got some other advanced tactics with some other types of ads and all that kind of stuff too. But the idea is to bring these strangers into your website. Once we get the visitors there, our goal is to get them to convert in one fashion or another through forms, through some sort of a call to action, some sort of a landing page offer that you might be giving them. From there, once we have them as a lead, we want to move them into our CRM and put them into email marketing and workflows and follow up with these folks in order to be able to close them into a customer. And then once we're done with customers and actually closing them, the job's not done. We want to make sure that we're delighting along the way. We always are finding ways to re-engage. That could be through surveys, smart content, and maybe some social monitoring as well. But really, at the end of the day, the inbound methodology is about the best way to turn strangers into customers and promoters of your business. And it's kind of a funny word, right, or a funny acronym. And this is something that Google has put out not too long ago. That is a great study. But really quick, I just want you guys to be thinking about what ZMOT actually means and the actual correlation of this 70%. So as we talk about this for a couple seconds, zero moment of truth is what ZMOT stands for. And at the end of the day, what zero moment of truth is, it was a foundational research study that was done with Forrester Research along with Google. It started off as a B2B business study, and then Google did the exact same study, but they really kind of twisted it and focused it on B2C. But basically what the zero moment of truth means is that it's the first time someone contacts you on your website or by a phone call, or they might have maybe walked into your store. So that's zero moment of truth. It's also the moment when they say they trust you enough to actually contact you to where you'll actually know about it. They might be on your website as a incognito browser, they're just looking, or we don't know who they are yet, but the actual time it takes them to actually fill out the form or make up the phone call, and so they're looking, that's zero moment of truth. It's also the moment they might be giving their money to you. But something actually skipped here. I apologize. I have to back up. But with all that being said, what's the number going to be over the next couple of years? 70%, meaning, I apologize about that with the skip there on the slide, but what basically the 70% and how that correlates to it is that 70% of the time before that person actually fills out the form, that's what they're talking about. So 70% of those visitors. With that being at 70% right now, we're looking at that number going up over the next 10 years easily. So with that being said, we used to live in a buyer's beware society. We're now moving into more of a seller beware economy, meaning people are needing to find that trustworthy content on your website to be able to deal with answering their questions that they possibly have. So buyers, they want to connect with sales during the consideration stage, right? At what point is it these buyers are actually wanting to do that? Well, awareness stage is when they're actually talking about first learning about the product. They know that they have an issue that they need to solve. The consideration stage is about after they've researched it, they have a short list of who it is that they want to actually work with. And then the decision stage is really about after they've reviewed their short list and they're ready to buy. So the idea is that we want to make sure that we're building the right type of content so we can be in that consideration stage for your visitors. Inbound is also about providing an absolute awesome experience. It's got to be essential as we're talking about moving forward in the inbound journey. And then inbound is also an approach that's focused on attracting customers through content and interactions that are relevant and helpful. Again, we want to make sure that we're not being interruptive. So we got buyer wants, and then we've got marketing and sales, and what it is that we need to actually provide. So from a buyer's perspective, they want us as marketers or as business owners to actually listen to their specific needs, provide relevant information, respond in a timely manner, and provide a range of options. Marketing and sales, on the other side, needs to provide personalization, automation, and even more self-service. Your buyers, they want to be able to educate themselves. With that being said, 74% of online consumers get frustrated when website content appears that has absolutely nothing to do with their interests. You guys might be jumping around in your own experiences, hopping on websites, and you're saying, wow, this just does not relate to me, or it's not the exact same thing I was looking for, or maybe you were on a Google search and you actually clicked through the result and that page did not necessarily provide you with that piece of information you were hoping for, so you bounce out and then you jump onto another page instead. So what we're really trying to do with inbound is we want to make sure that we're listening, that we're being human in our marketing efforts, that we're asking a lot of questions. Obviously, we want to be very helpful. Biggest of all, we want to educate and build trust. We also want to be super relevant, and really we want to add value. That's really about what inbound is all about in this particular stage of content that we're talking about. So this is a great quote that I love from Brené Brown, where she says, trust is built in very small moments, and it's beyond true, and the more that we can do that, I think that we're going to be moving down that right path. So really quick, let's just talk about how do we actually implement inbound marketing. We have many tactics in the arsenal with inbound marketing, everything from email marketing to how we have our site built to search engine optimization. We have marketing automation tools, landing pages, obviously the analytics, social media, and blogging. And there's even more pieces of the puzzle too. But when it gets to actually implementing this process, at the end of the day, it's starting with content. And the content that we're building has to be the right content in the right place at the right time. So let's just jump back to this again really quick too, and just say, what we want to make sure that everything that we implement is in a what we call a SMART goal. So that's got to be a specific goal, has to be something that can be measurable, has to be something that can be achievable, and we actually want to put some time around that. So let's say a specific goal might be, we want to generate 100 new leads this year. Now, how are we going to actually measure that? What kind of analytics are we going to be able to utilize? And then, is it actually achievable? Based upon where your website is today and the type of and the type of traffic that you might be getting today, is 100 goals actually achievable, or is that just too pie in the sky? And the other thing, once we have that information, is understanding the time-bound aspect of it by being able to put some time frames around it, like when do we actually want these things to happen? If we're to jump into a little bit of each of these really fast, so email marketing and how it relates to content is going to be very, very important. So email marketing, people like to think about email marketing as blasting emails, the traditional old school, let's send out a newsletter or whatever. When it comes to email marketing and how we want to make sure we're doing this in the inbound methodology, is that we want to make sure that we're building out very targeted lists. We want to know who it is that we're sending emails out to. So just like the content we're trying to serve up on the website being for the right person at the right time, the same thing, it holds even more true for email, because I don't know about you guys, but with emails, I get probably at least 150 emails a day from all sorts of folks, everybody trying to sell me something. And the most crazy part is that half the time I'll open the email and it has nothing to do with me. One of the examples that I always like to joke about is that I have a Nordstrom email. I signed up for a card from them a few years ago. At the time of signing up for the card, they knew that I was male. They knew my age. They might have even asked a couple of interests or something along those lines, but they had a basic idea and a profile of who I was. But the thing is that every time I get an email from these guys, they're always trying to send me something about why I should be buying a great pair of women's shoes. Now, if they knew that I was actually married, which they don't, then maybe that's relevant as a gift idea for my wife. But the fact is that they should be sending information to me that has to do with me and the situation that I'm in with their particular company. So when we're talking about email marketing, we want to make sure that we're segmenting our list properly, that we have these built on personas so we know who we're actually targeting, but we're sending them the information that they need at that right time, so they will actually engage with your email, because nothing worse than just sending emails over and over and over just to see your open rates dwindle over time. So the goal is to get open rates up and get engagement up. We also talk about websites, so making sure that the website is built in a format that's not only friendly on mobile devices, that it's not only secure from a secure socket layer, SSL, but it's also that it's going to be built in a way that could also be smart. Could it be providing content based upon who that person is? Could your homepage possibly change based upon how somebody's in your funnel already, and maybe they're in a different stage in the buyer's journey, so could we be giving them some other things? So that's another option with sites. Obviously, SEO and search optimization, this is something that's very important. It has not gone away over the years. It's had some challenges in the past because there was some stuff that people were doing that were a little bit somewhat gray hat, black hat. But really, content or SEO is very, very important, and it's going to be the main driver for that is going to be through not only optimizing the site, but building out thoughtful, optimized content in the blogging space and building out ways to help rise all tides by building out the right content, focus on the right keywords to then get those pages to rank. So that's still going to be very important, and that's a very big part of our process. Marketing automation is another piece where it's, somebody takes this action and then what? It's somebody fills out a form on your website and maybe it has to do with a particular persona or an offer. What's that marketing automation going to look like as far as emails that are going to go back? Or could that marketing automation be a task that's maybe created in your CRM to follow up with that person? There's many things that we can be doing with marketing automation, and that becomes a very, very big part of the play. Landing pages are very important as well. How are we building those landing pages up for those particular offers? Maybe you've got some sort of a demo or a walkthrough, or maybe you've got some sort of a guide that you want folks to download. What's that strategy look like? And when people actually follow up and actually do that piece, how are we going to follow up with them? Analytics is probably the biggest piece of this pie. I mean, social media and the blogging part are very important, but the analytics to me is like the biggest thing, because once we have that SMART goal, and we know what our targets are going to be and the KPIs that we want to track, analytics is going to be the driving force for everything that we do moving forward. The whole idea is that, we want our analytics to provide us with that data. We go into this thing with like our best foot forward, and we say, this is what our plans are based upon the data that we have now, but now the data that we start collecting month over month over month, year over year is going to actually help us now create the better campaign down the road. So analytics is something that is often overlooked. Some sites don't even have some basic information, as far as like Google Analytics installed. And oftentimes we need more analytics than just that in order to understand what's going on. The cool part in this particular scenario that we're talking about is that we break the analytics down not necessarily to just the user who's on your site or the visitor who's on your site. We're actually breaking things down to the actual name of the person and the actions that they're taking on their site. And this is something that we'll be talking about in possible future webinars with you guys too. But the analytics is absolutely imperative. So I start talking about this with folks, and they come to me and they're saying like, yeah, right, Doc, who can do all of these things? This whole inbound thing looks too big. What's the ROI? We do this, are we going to actually make any money? And the answer to that question is yes, with the right plan. And the other aspect of that too is that I want you guys to be thinking of marketing, or at least this inbound side, not so much as a marketing expense, but it has to be thought of more as an investment. Be thinking about, you invest X amount of dollars in marketing, this should now return X amount of dollars in revenue. And that's what I'm going to show you now. So in my industry, I happen to know a guy who owns a pool company. And he's one of my great friends, and his story is absolutely amazing. But back in 2007, 2008, we had that rough patch in the economy. His business was going good, but then he hit that patch, and it's like, all right, now he's wondering how on earth is he going to pay these bills. He's got a whole bunch of folks that are actually working with him, so how's he going to cover salaries? He's wondering if he and his partners are going to actually lose their homes because they were, floating second mortgages and all that kind of stuff to keep things up, and sales were obviously down. In 2009, he actually ran across this whole inbound philosophy, and he embraced what he calls the they ask, you answer philosophy that he actually has, and he started blogging daily on his website. If we're fast forwarding to last year, he's the #1 pool site probably in the world. He outranks all of his competitors for the terms that he's wanting to go after. He's outselling his competitors, and he's usually $5,000 to $10,000 higher on a per pool basis, if not more, than any of his competitors. So he's not worried about price shoppers. I mean, people come to him because of the value. His prospects are becoming more and more and more educated, and his sales cycle has dropped dramatically. Now, that map here shows a representation of, like, I think this map was about 2 years ago, like everywhere he's installed pools in his local area. And so the part that I really want to talk about here is making sure that you guys understand that this is an investment and it takes time to get these kind of results. But look at what was going on back in 2012. This is some of the data that he shared with me, and he was looking at people who were looking for, now this is back before Google took away a lot of our insight into the actual keywords that were being driven to our website. But the neat part about this particular story and this particular graph is because the way that our analytics software works is that it's attributing actual leads to a particular keyword or a piece of content or whatever, right? So what we're trying to see here is that he started blogging about fiberglass pool prices, fiberglass pool problems, also the name of his company, or the cost of fiberglass pools. And really a lot of these happen to do with cost, right? But on the right-hand side, what you're seeing is that, you know, look at all the visitors that are coming in based upon those particular terms, but even better, look at all the leads that he's receiving based upon those particular terms. What this at the end of the day did was $3.5 million in sales attributed to one blog post that he wrote that was covering this whole pool price thing, right? This is a question that people are asking the internet, and they're saying, how much does something cost? He now shows this particular result, and he received $3.5 million in sales that he's attributing to just one blog post on his website. Some people might ask me too, they're saying, well, you know, I want to rank for a super high level keyword, like in our instances here for this call, senior living. Well, that's going to be a little bit harder to do because there's so much competition. But if you're addressing the question that people are asking, how much does senior living cost, or in this case, how much does a fiberglass pool cost, now we're starting to see how people come and they find you. That's in a blog post that they're finding online. And yeah, you may not receive, well, in this instance, his like unknown keywords or his overall visitors are way high. You know, he's getting less and less visitors to particular blog posts, but the thing about those particular blog posts is they're very high target traffic. It's answering the specific question that that person is asking, and once we get them to that blog post, now we're getting them to take more and more action with us. So the question comes back, or the answer comes to that ROI question. I mean, is $3.5 million in sales, you know, is that pretty good ROI? Obviously, this is something that is, you know, if done, this can and should work for any other business as well. Results vary, and obviously the amount of dollars revenue generated is different based upon your guys' actual cost of goods, right? But you know, there's tons and tons more success stories just like this, and once you get into the inbound side of things with the content marketing, you can start getting these numbers, and you can start seeing that, yeah, we put in some time and we get all this content. Now we're starting to see numbers roll in, and we're attributing content to dollars in the way of revenue. To kind of jump back to his example again really fast is that, you know, pre-content marketing back in the year 2000, you know, he was roughly receiving about 2,000 visitors to his website. Now, you see a bunch of ups and downs, but that is basically due to seasonality reasons and whatnot. But after 5 years, so this data is as of 2014, right? We got 3 more years on top of this, but he's now getting over 320,000 people to his website at this point in time, leading his entire industry. And the green is representative of organic search. So, you know, the blue and all those other things could be like paid or whatnot, but this is him owning the organic listings in Google for those topics. So the other thing I also like to talk about too is if there's anything that you think of that has to be sold face-to-face, this has to do just as much with your industry as it does with the pool industry. It's going to be able to be sold online in the future. So if I bring up the pool example one more time, and the reason why I'm bringing up the pool thing is that it's a different business than yours, but it's a business, and this can happen in any industry, not just pools. But for the pool example is that last year he sold 95 pools. He attributes 80 of those pools to being sold online. He's seeing that he had $50,000 each for each one with never even having to go to the customer's home and sell. And why is that? Because he is now the trust agent in his industry. The biggest thing here is that, to kind of give you an idea this and how this could possibly relate to you, but in his instance, because he had to go out to somebody's home and he had to do the measurement, and then he had to sell them on the product while at the house, and his sales process was like 5 to 6 hours on a per client basis as he got the lead. But over time, as people came to his website and started trusting him more, they were willing to now just basically, in a nutshell, he'd walk out to the customer's website or he'd get out to their home, and the call goes from, or the visit goes from having to like go through all the things and all the options and everything else to the consumer, in a sense, saying, I went through your website. This is exactly what I want. They're holding up the hand with the piece of paper, and this is the package that we want. He ends up just doing final measurements and cuts his time down for sales over 80%. The other interesting thing, which I didn't have in the slide deck, but I just want to bring up here on the fly, is that we have this thing called a magic number, and at least this is what he calls it, and his magic number is 30. And Paul, if I was to ask you what 30 means as far as a magic number, could you have any guesses on that?
30,000? Is this for the actual cost of the?
Nope.
Are these actual?
This is for his actual sales. So sometimes I do get that answer, but what that 30 means is that he's seeing on average that the best sales that he is getting are these people who are basically ready to buy, just purchase, go out to his site, do the final measurement. He's seeing on average that that person is reading at a minimum 30 pages of content on his website before he submits the estimate quote functionality, right? So the idea behind that is that the customer, the consumer, the prospect has become so educated and he's read so many pages on the website that he is now really ready to buy. Every business will end up having their own magic number or whatever that is, but we're looking at the driver of what's going to help make the decision easier for your prospect to move forward and do business with you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so basically going from a marketing qualified lead, educating yourself on the website, and then finally jumping onto the next stage, which would be then the sales qualified lead. So it's really the website's doing everything for him before that sales qualified lead even reaches out. So he's not, again, going back to the whole old school method, he's not cold calling, he's waiting for the customer to come to him.
Right. So what we're doing is we're trimming down that sales cycle. We're making it so, the traditional method was, salesman picking up the phone call, dial for dollars, over and over and over. And now we're switching the process around to where it's, hey, we're changing our sales guys to be much more almost like customer service type, but also they're helping them finalize the exact thing that they just want. The customer knows what they want, and they're looking for it. They're going to find the best place for it. And the whole idea behind this is to make your website the best place for that content. You become that trusted agent in your field and cut down that sales process tremendously. And not only that too, but when you get into the analytics and you're starting to see that particular contact, you could arrive at that person's house, or in the example of your industry, you could be looking at that contact record and saying, hey, these are the pages of content that they read on my website. Maybe it's 10, maybe it's 20, 30, whatever. But now you have got that context on now how to handle that visit when they come to tour your property, right? So now you're going to know these are the things that they were really interested in. So now the sales rep, as they're talking to them or before they talk to them, they're actually building the right presentation or the right topic of conversation for them based upon the history that they actually have on that customer. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. So for inbound and content marketing really to work well, we got to have management and employee buy-in. This is not a scenario where the marketing department just says we're doing this today and this is what we're doing and everybody come along for the ride. We need to make sure that everybody who is a part of the company as much as possible can be a part of the solution. All employees and staff we kind of play with, or at least I always promote, everybody's in marketing now. Everybody's in sales now. But we kind of call this insourcing. And we believe that nobody knows the business better than the people within the business. And, once we have the measurable goals and we have the strategy in place, the idea next up is to actually execute on that plan. And the challenge that I see a lot of businesses have is that, we want to make sure that people understand that we want to see results so quickly. But the thing is that, it takes time. And so if you don't get the results right away, understand that we have the plan, we're moving towards that strategy, and we're actually getting it done. We want to make sure, too, that we're not overthinking the content. A persona, as you probably talked about with your clients before, and maybe people on this call, is that, really a persona is a prospect with pain. What's the challenge? What's the symptom that they actually have? If you go back to that they ask you answer piece, whether it's good, bad, or ugly, you write about it. We're listening to what customers ask. If one asks, hundreds or thousands more might be asking the same thing, and that then becomes a blog post. That becomes them going to Google and searching for that piece of content. If you're trying to think of ideas of what to write, look at the content that your sales folks might be writing in emails back and forth with people, or as they're on calls and they're answering the same questions on a daily basis. That's the kind of content we want to write. When we're talking about the big 5 of content types that work really well with your website, we're looking at content that's written around costs. We're looking at content that's written around problems people might be having. We're looking around versus type posts like, this versus that, our industry versus somebody else in the industry. In the example of the pool company, fiberglass versus concrete pools. We're looking at reviews. We're looking at the best of type posts as well. These are the things that people search for a ton on Google. Just to kind of show you that, is that there's this great website that I suggest everybody on the call go check this thing out. It's called Answer the Public, and it's really funny. This dude's on the main page, and he'll do funny things with his face and whatnot. But the idea is basically to see what people are asking Google. This is some of the similar information that you get out of Google. Like if you do a search and you scroll all the way down to the bottom of that search page, you'll see people are also searching for these topics. This is a software that was developed to kind of do that same thing, but cluster it just a little bit differently. So in this instance, we decided, hey, let's go take a look at and see what people are actually searching for in senior living. So when it kicks this thing out, it'll kick out a big diagram, it'll kick out a whole bunch of great information, but what it's doing is like saying, this is the who, when, where, what, how, basically of the questions, right? And it's saying, here's what people are actually asking for around this particular topic. So in this particular instance, we've got how much is senior living, or how to select senior living. So in this instance, we're going to say, how much is senior living? We jump over to Google, and here's our results, right? So we have our first page, which unfortunately in this particular example is a whole bunch of paid copy up front in the first results, as well as Google giving a good definition of it here. But the next part of the page, once we go down where it says people are also asking, is actually the actual organic results. So here's where we're seeing a site which I'm assuming most of you guys are very familiar with, which is the seniorliving.com, and these guys are addressing the question, how much does senior living cost? So we know that somebody's addressing it, right? If we go ahead and we start looking at this particular blog post, again, they're addressing the question in the title. They're talking about, whether out of necessity or choice, you might be in that particular stage where you're actually looking for it. Down below, they're saying, in a recent study, it pegs nationwide monthly averages or whatever. The challenge that we see with this particular thing is that, this is not your site. This is somebody else's site that's generating leads that are going to sell to you. They've also got additional ways for people to do other things on the site, right, and sign up for their newsletters and whatnot. At the end of the day, this piece of content could be and should be on your website answering these questions. We want to make sure that if we can be addressing the content and addressing the questions and being the trusted advisor, moving people through this process, we'll get people into a blog post that's like this. So consider that this is maybe on your site, and we're going to give an example here in a second, but let's assume this is your site. Well, what are the actions that we want them to take next? How do we get them to love this piece of content, and this is now a trustworthy piece of content, and now we're getting them to take additional action with you? How do we get them to move down funnel? So today we pretty much focused on content. But there is so much more to inbound. If we were to take that inbound methodology that I showed you at the very beginning, we flip it on its side, it pretty much looks like a sales funnel, right? So through our attraction stage, That's what we mainly talked about today: content, blogging, touch a little on social and our sites and optimization, but look at how much more there is to the whole inbound methodology. There's a lot that needs to be done with it, but it is all starting with content and strategy, and that's the main thing that we wanted to talk about today. So at the end of the day, be honest and transparent. Content is the greatest sales and trust building tool in the world, period. And I just want to leave you guys with this. Become the best teacher in the world with your website. Become the Wikipedia of your space. Don't be salesy, be helpful, and you guys are going to see awesome results with your marketing efforts. So that's the end of my presentation, and I know you wanted to cover a couple pieces as well, Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Doc. That was amazing, and I wanted to give a pointed example when you were talking about not overthinking the content. What we did, this is just one example. This is a community that we're working with, and when we were coming up with content, very similar to how much does senior living cost, we came up with a keyword phrase or term, and we formulated a blog around that. And that's just simply Senior Living Funding Solutions. That was the name of the blog, and different variations on that, but this is most topical because this goes to show you how quickly you can get indexed based on targeted keywords or keyword phrases. I mean, again, this is just one question that the industry has. This is just one piece of content that we're trying to answer for everyone. So keep in mind, this blog post, we just did the research, 2 days ago to see how this was performing. So we actually wrote this November 8th. It was published. And within a week and a half, it's indexable, it's searchable, and it's also on the first page. So what we find is, this is the educational piece of the content, right? And a lot of the communities that we look at, if they do have a blog, they're kind of just scratching the surface. They have some educational content, but that's kind of where we're falling short. There might be a call to action, call us or use our contact form. But what we've done in this example is we're actually, on top of the article at the very end, we're providing an actual guide. So this is something that someone has to opt into, the download now, your guide for paying for long-term care. So this is the additional hook. So we talked about attracting customers to your website, potential leads. So this is actually getting them further along that funnel. So once they do opt in, what's amazing is from that point forward, we have some of their information and we can move them along that journey a little bit more with marketing the funnel with automated workflows, getting them closer to a sales qualified lead. So again, we didn't just stop with value-added blogging content. For me, inbound, it's becoming, you're basically wanting to be an industry leader. You want to be the thought leader, and basically a resource that the community can come back to for relevant content. So again, questions that you need answered and problems that need to be solved. So no longer, would someone necessarily be going, especially if it's regional, typing a blind ask into Google. You want to be the thought leader. You want people coming back to your website. So say if someone does download and opt into this, they may be really early on in the buyer's journey. It could be weeks before they consider coming back and doing more research. But what's great is, based off of the information that we've gathered, we can continue that sales process by sending them topical reminders, having them come back with other articles that might be related to where they're at in that buyer's journey. So that's just one example that we wanted to show, kind of piggybacking on Doc, what you had as an example earlier.
And the thing that I love that you mentioned here is that, people always ask, how long does this thing take? How long does it take to see results? And the thing that I just love is that when you go this other route and you start addressing the common questions, and if you can get out in front of it in your industry and be that thought leader, the thing is, like you said, you will rank for this content almost, within days, if not sometimes the same day. I've seen some content with a very active site that blogs often, they're getting indexed a lot. So as they're writing a piece of content that's maybe a little bit more, you know, it's a little bit more targeted piece of content, that piece of content is getting ranked fast. And what's great about that, now you are the person answering that question. Again, are you going to be seeing a ton of traffic come from that? Not necessarily, but what you're going to get is that targeted traffic. And then hopefully now you're going to get them to stay on the site and go read more posts. And then over time, the whole idea about this long tail content is now we're going to have all of the hero keywords and everything else that people are wanting to rank for. Over time, that's going to help lift all tides. So once we can do that, now it's really starting to take off.
Yeah, and just to keep in mind in this one example, this is just the awareness phase. So once we realize who's engaging on the website, what they're downloading and interacting with, to your point of smart content, the ability that we have within the content management system is when that same user comes back, you can display a completely separate content offer. You obviously wouldn't want to display the guide to paying for long-term care if you know that that user has already digested that information and has that at their fingertips. You want to provide them new, fresh content during their journey.
Very true. Love it.
Awesome. Great example, Paul. So right now we're going to begin answering some of the questions that were submitted during today's presentation. As a reminder, you can still submit questions to the questions pane in your attendee control panel. And our first question is an interesting one. One of our attendees wants to know if the pool guy is Marcus Sheridan. And I think, is that who you're referring to, Doc? Yep, I think we lost Doc. But yes, I think the pool man is Marcus Sheridan. And he is,
yep,
yes.
I'm back.
Okay.
that is Marcus Sheridan, yes.
That's what we thought. How funny. Another question that came in is, we're currently doing a blog but not showing any increased website traffic. So what are they doing wrong?
I probably need to know a little bit more information about that. So, how often are they blogging? Is it like once a month, once a week, once a day? Is there any type of strategy around that from a standpoint of, are we building a campaign where we're trying to rank for an overall certain hero keyword, and then now we're going to build the supplemental blog posts around that to help us get to that point eventually? The thing about blogging is that there's a direct correlation with the amount of content that we're writing and how quickly we're going to get ranked, and we're going to start seeing our traffic. Now, when that example in the pool company, with what Marcus does is that at that time he was blogging daily. He was basically staying up at night and writing a piece of content on a daily basis, so he would have between 5 and 7 blog posts a week. The more you do, the faster the results you're going to see. If you're doing like 1 blog post a week, it might take a little bit longer to see the results. At the minimal, I kind of always recommend you should be planning at least 2 a week, because what that also does is it shows Google that you are actually relevant and you're becoming a thought leader in your industry, and it's going to come back and index your site more often than if you just post once a month.
Yeah, and actually,
go ahead, Paul.
I was going to say, outside of the organic perspective, a lot of times when people are creating blog content, regardless of whether or not it's once a week or more than that, they're falling short in having people assuming they're going to be coming through organic versus sharing that out through their social channels. And even something as simple as a subscriber list, an opt-in list. People are so busy creating the content, they forget, oh, well, we have this audience already. They're on social media. We have a contact list. So kind of meeting them where they're at. If they're not coming back on a regular basis through organic, you can always help increase web traffic by sharing on social and then sending out to your constituents.
That's great.
Absolutely correct.
That answers our next question is, how does inbound work with social media?
Social media it works right alongside of it, right? So you've got a couple of different aspects that you can do. Obviously, the main thing is to be able to share your content, number one, but you don't want to share, over promote yourself through your social. So the other side of how inbound works with social is really in that listening aspect. It's about using sites like Twitter and whatnot where you could actually set up a like a listening station, and you could listen in on conversations and interact in a helpful manner. And you can set up many different dashboards in order to do that, but really it's about figuring out ways to, again, take the same inbound philosophy and the methodology and not be pushy and all that kind of stuff to just be helpful. So what are the helpful things you could be doing on social, and what does your content share versus engagement, ratio look like and whatnot? The other side of the social component, which is newer, is a lot of the remarketing approaches that people are doing. So you might land on a website today, and let's say we land on one of your websites. You've now cookied that person through some remarketing tools such as like AdRoll or whatnot, or even the Facebook pixels and whatnot. Now we can start showing them related ads based upon the content that they might have been viewing on your page, so we can make sure that we're reminding them nicely, right, that we're still here if they want us. We're not trying to be pushy with it, but there's some of these things that just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. But the best way that I see it work is within that remarketing approach and just staying in touch with them. I'm sure you probably noticed that you might go on a website, next thing you know, everywhere you are, whatever social channel you're on, you could be on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. You're seeing something from that company. It seems like they're following you around. If you do that in the right way, it pays off really well.
Great. Last question. What is a good resource to learn more about SEO so I can have an intelligent conversation with our web developer?
SEO is a fun one. One of my favorite resources is Moz. That crew does great work. They do a lot of awesome education. They do what they call a Whiteboard Friday type video series that they have all the way back for like over 5 years. You can kind of go back and watch some of the changes throughout the industry. They're one of my favorite ones, so it's moz.com.
That's great. Awesome. Well, thank you all for attending, and thank you to our presenters. Doc and Paul, you guys were terrific and very informative. Just a reminder that our next webinar in the series is on December 6th, using your website to attract, engage, and nurture. So please go ahead and sign up for that. If you can't make it, that's okay. We'll send out a recording and a transcript of the webinar at the end. So thank you so much to our presenters and everyone.
Happy to be here.
Thanks, Doc.
Thanks for having me. You bet.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.